I would encourage any budding physician entrepreneurs or anybody who's thinking about kind of branching off and doing their own thing to expose yourself to as many ideas and as many people and as many different ways of thinking as possible, and be as open-minded as possible.
So, how are you finding balance between doing locums, being a full time business owner, and also writing a book? And it sounds like you guys just moved. So, it's a whole lot of stuff happening at once.
It's hard, Santoshi. It's a lot. um, no, I mean, I think again, y- you have to have principles, you have to have values, and I think it's very important to have a framework by which you approach life. And so, if the non-negotiables for me are a quality 8 hours of sleep, or making it to the gym every day. Try to do my best to get some hormetic stressors in. I love the sauna. I do cold plunge several times a week for mood anyway. I know there's not really longevity data on cold plunge, which drives me crazy, but that people say this. But anyway, I'll spare you that tangent. But anyway, I try to be as intentional about my health and my wellness as I can. I try to be as intentional about time with my wife as I can. Which, by the way, Shallow Corey and I got married in 2018. I don't know if you know that. So anyway, still going strong. 11 years together, coming up on 12. Creating I guess a set of values that are important, and then reverse engineering your life around, okay, what's the end goal? What are my principles? And then fitting in the work in between, and trying my best not to compromise on that. Because you all know, I mean, as entrepreneurs and physicians, if there's an empty space on the calendar, it's going to get filled with something. So I really, really try to do my best to leave time for what really matters. And the work is always going to be there. And you have to have that mindset, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more about the networking that you said. When I moved to the Bay Area, I could see that, I could see the entrepreneur mind, even young people in their 20s, they're thinking about startups and going for it, lots of ideas, very different than the environment that we trained at, right? The clinical medicine is very, very different. You're just put your head down and just be the cog in the wheel. And as you said, either A or B, there's not many options out there, or at least they make you think that there aren't many options out there. But as you said, there is a lot of options, and we have so much skill sets that we can use to be entrepreneurs. So having said that, what would be your advice to physicians considering non-traditional paths or part-time work and going about their ideas?
A handful of things. First off, I think we all, when it comes to that dogma, consider the source of any information that you ever receive. Right? I mean, you wouldn't go ask a non-tax professional tax advice, or at least you probably shouldn't. Right? Just like you wouldn't ask us about the best practice for delivering a baby. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's better than the average person who's a non-doctor, but you'd want an OBGYN to help you with that, right? I mean, kind of get the point. Um, so be mindful of where that information comes from, and what I mean by that is that if you've got somebody who's been in academics their whole life and that's what they believe and that's been their perspective, then you're probably going to hear an opinion consistent with that. And so along that front, I would encourage any budding physician entrepreneurs or anybody who's thinking about kind of branching off and doing their own thing to expose yourself to as many ideas and as many people and as many different ways of thinking as possible, and be as open-minded as possible. Um, I think we do a real disservice in just our basic education in our country anyway, number one, but number two, especially in the medical training pipeline, that we have got to be a perfectionist and to be really overqualified for every single decision that we make. And now, again, when it comes to treating status epilepticus or an acute stroke, okay, fine, maybe that's necessary to make sure that we are overqualified for that position to have the best possible outcome for a patient. But how many times have all three of us beat ourselves up over not achieving a desired outcome because we didn't get it right and because it wasn't perfect and wasn't the desired outcome, knowing that we can't fix everybody, knowing that unfortunately people are going to die and that there are adverse effects listed on every medication. Like failure is part of life. It's part of learning. And we are not conditioned to believe or embody that. You are conditioned to believe that if you're not 100% all the time, you're not good enough. And that's just an unrealistic standard, number one. Number two, we are not encouraged to work in teams. You're when you take your boards and when you pass all your exams. I mean, it's if it's a multiple choice answer, it's never consult GI. It's like you got to figure it out, right? When in reality, medicine's a team sport, and life is a team sport. And so it just, I think this again, this brainwashing that we go through, that you are it and you have to be perfect and on all the time, is so backwards. Because as you all know, with launching a podcast and trying to go find locums contracts and just start your own business and do all of this, like you just have to go do it and go figure it out. And it's not going to be perfect and it's going to be messy and you're going to suck at it probably for the good, I don't know, however long it takes. But you've got to take that first step forward and take action and learn and know that you're going to fail and then iterate and then think about it and reiterate and get better. And that's how it has to look. You cannot expect to be perfect and get it right. And I just think we're not set up for success there. And people realizing that, I think, is a big first step.
I think you're absolutely right. The thing is, when you go pre med and you decide you're going to go into medicine, it's like this rigid path that you have to go down. And once you're done, you take a job at XYZ, maybe an academic center, maybe inpatient, and you just put your head down and you keep working. I don't think we get very much, not education, but I don't think there's a lot of physicians out there who are also doing other things to educate us on the fact that there are other things that are possible, right? Like you said, it's almost like brainwashing, like we're expected to believe a certain thing. And I came to this realization around COVID time that it's very ironic that we are in the business of healthcare where we tell people, sleep for 8 hours, eat well, exercise, blah, blah, blah. But we can't do that for ourselves.
Mm.
And we see the worst outcomes, right? But instead of using those outcomes to help us realize that life is short and we should really do what we want to do, we instead go back to work and work another 100-hour weeks. And so it's like, it's very it was kind of rattling when I realized that I'm expected to be this purveyor of healthcare when I can't even take that advice for myself or achieve what I want to in life. So I think that really resonated with me what you said.
Yeah, I mean, I just again, I really want people to understand that there's so many ways to achieve success in life, and it is not to selflessly sacrifice your body or your well-being. I mean, back to COVID, look at the rates of burnout and unfortunately physician suicide. I mean, are you kidding me? That's horrific to even think about. That people thought the only way out of this is to end my life, or to end the suffering, is to end my life. I mean, that is so disheartening to have these just brilliant, caring, helpful people that feel that kind of pressure, that don't realize that there's just so many other ways to succeed in life. And yeah, I mean, it feels to me like every year that I'm in a hospital, doctors just get squeezed harder and harder and harder. We are, not to be disparaging to anyone else that's in healthcare, but because I mean, certainly nurses bust their ass and they work long, hard shifts that we don't have to, think about in terms of moving patients and all the things they deal with on a personal level. But take the administrative bloat, these like young kids that are coming out of school with an MBA that have not the first ounce of direct patient care experience ever. They're spreadsheet people and they're coming and telling us how we should be practicing and taking care of people. And like, pardon my language, but it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I mean, this is like, you are so underqualified to make that decision about someone else's life or the care that they need. But I mean, that grinds my gears if you can't tell. And we're squeezed as a result. So what do? You try to chart late, you stay late, you make the right decision, you work more hours, you get squeezed more, you get paid less. Like, man, that's such a backward system. So anyway, that fires me up every time I think about it.
No, it fires us up too. We we did like 4 episodes talking about it, but it's really silly. The people who are telling us how medicine needs to be practiced have never seen a patient in their life. And it's just going to continue to get worse. There's like, I think 10 or 12 administrators for a doctor in any given hospital setting. And that's not an exaggeration, when the reality is we're the breadwinners of the whole operation. If we're not using our talents to take care of patients, no one's getting paid, right?
Yep.
So it's almost very backwards that you're treating your physicians like they're at the bottom of the totem pole, and really not how it should be. And I mean, COVID aside, how often do we walk in, even doing locums, and someone, a nice, healthy person, is now paraplegic or is now hemiplegic from a big stroke or like a spinal cord accident or something, just bad luck, right? And you see that and you're like, wow, that could be me tomorrow. There's nothing preventing this from happening to me. But again, instead of using that and trying to live life to the best of your ability, you just go back to work and clock in, and you work harder and harder and harder. It's crazy, but I think that's why it's really fascinating, and also very cool that you were able to take this concept of preserving longevity and making it into a coaching business. Is that also what your book is about? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your book and how that came to be?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, that was part of it. I mean, the book is designed around educating people on first finding their purpose in life. So literally, chapter one of my book is "Find Your Why," because I truly believe that if we are not anchored in our purpose, then what are we doing anything for anyway? This gets back to this idea of lifestyle design and the principles, values. Because we can. There's always work, there's always busyness, but if you don't have a true north star and you don't know what you're working towards, it's just hard to know where you're headed and how are you making meaningful progress without being masked as being busy. So that's I think the foundation. From there, it's broken up into two parts. There's kind of the mechanisms and then the interventions. And the mechanisms are sort of what is neurodegenerative disease, what is cardiovascular disease, what are the inflammatory processes that can affect the brain and the body. So kind of walk people through really the big things that can happen and kind of go wrong, and then underlying all of those systems are like the hallmarks of aging, right? And if you guys have spent much time on this, but these sort of subcellular mechanisms that truly cause aging on a cellular level, that in every organ system manifest as coronary artery disease or Alzheimer's or or renal disease. I mean, pick a thing, right? It's all the same stuff. It's just happening in different organs, and we all learn to diagnose these as I don't know, chronic nephrotic syndrome or hypertension or whatever, but it's the same stuff going on, and so your body responds to different interventions, and we look at things like epigenetic and biological aging and what all of these different interventions actually do. Getting me to part two, turns out, yeah, if you get 8 hours of quality sleep a night, your lymphatic system works, which we still didn't even know about till what, 10 years ago. I mean, that's still a relatively new thing. So that's wild to me. You want to clear out some amyloid, like probably ought to get some sleep, right? Or any of your body's reparative functions. Maybe you shouldn't pound sugar in McDonald's. Maybe you should eat some fiber and have some, phytonutrients and polyphenols. And so just walking people through what does that look like, and how can you set up a successful life using these kind of foundational principles. I don't just give people, like, don't say, here, go do this. I say, here's how you work, and here are the options. You pick what works for you is sort of the idea.
What were the biggest lessons you learned, writing this book, entrepreneurship, and from Transcend Health?
Man, lots. I learned why most people don't write a book because it's hard. It takes a lot of work. Um, no, it's been fun. So another general principle that I've sort of stumbled upon, I guess, through just reflection. We work so hard to get where we are, whatever our career in life, and certainly the physician pipeline is tough. We all know that, right? It's intellectually difficult. It's physically difficult. It's demanding, as we've said. It takes years out of your life that most people are off having a good time and partying on the weekends, and we chose a different path, right? Um, but whenever we get to the end of whatever that training is, I think most people settle into a career, and even as we all know, your first few years of practice anyway, I think are in some ways harder than training, because you're on your own and the responsibilities there, and you've got the foundation, but not the full experience yet, and so you're still learning, and it's hard. But once you're past that and you're kind of in your rhythm and in your groove, things kind of become routine, right? You've got the motor memory down. You've got there's the habits, and yes, we're doing continuing medical education and going to conferences, but you're already adding to a fairly substantial base body of knowledge that isn't really challenging any longer. I think we'd all probably agree with that if you've ever really thought about it. And so the longer this goes on, the less novel information your brain encounters. And when I say novel, I don't mean like, the next study in the New England Journal this month or whatever. I mean, or this week, but I mean like doing it and learning an entirely new discipline. And this is part of why I think the friction of entrepreneurship is so hard for so many, especially in the medical field. But learning what is a book writing process. I mean, what does business ownership look like? How do I have to market things? Getting comfortable in front of a camera and doing Zoom. I mean, and learning lights and sound and all this setup. Like, I've never had exposure to this ever. I mean, the most that we would do is like journal club, where you're presenting in front of your peers in a white coat behind a lectern, and that's pretty damn boring. And it's not engaging and dynamic. It's informational, but it's not what somebody in this market would pay for and want to see, right? And I want to be clear about this, because this is another reason I got into this. There's a big difference between having great production quality and zero scientific merit and value, because I think we've all seen that on social media. There's some people that spend a lot of money on their equipment and their advertising, and their information is not quality. I've seen plenty of examples of this. And I think most doctors are the opposite, right? We have the expertise, but we don't know how to present information in a way that's engaging. And so people would scroll right past your social media reel, or perhaps podcast, or pick a thing, right? That just doesn't appear how they would want it to look, even though it might be the most valuable thing they've ever heard. Um, so learning how to be more dynamic, more engaging. I mean, I'm in the middle of a speaker training course right now that I've never done before. So I've had to learn all these new skills that are incredibly difficult to me, and I've had to overcome a ton of resistance to doing them. And the lesson here, I think, that I've extracted, is that that signal of resistance and that difficulty is actually what you want to lean into. That's your brain's that's the physical manifestation of neuroplasticity, and you going, okay, your brain's going, this is hard, this is going to take some work, you should rest, relax, I'm here to protect you. And you've got to learn to ignore that voice and lean into it and go for it, imperfectly, knowing you're going to fail, as we said. And that's really the ticket to continuing growth, I think, moving forward. And the longevity literature would actually support that it's better for your brain long term anyway, because you're rewiring and constantly stimulating yourself.
That's great. I was going to actually say that I'm sure you're learning a lot, because the wellness space is really difficult, I think, to break into, right? Like, especially like longevity stuff, because there are a lot of charlatans peddling snake oil. So I'm glad there's an actual MD with some neurological background, who has a neurology residency under his belt, who knows what he's doing, um, giving this information out there. But yeah, I mean, it's hard, especially because you're kind of competing with people who have really high production values and very little substance. Has Are you doing any social media, or what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for the recognition, Santoshi, because I couldn't agree more. I mean, I see this stuff every day, and it just like makes me want to scream. That's actually my social media team lead. Was I ranted to her in like a voice note for like 5 minutes. She converted that into a post. She's like, "Is this good?" I'm like, "I probably need to back off a few clicks." But yeah, so I do get fired up again when I think about this kind of stuff, about the charlatans and the snake oil, as you said. Um, so yeah, again, had a ton of resistance to doing social media. I just, again, wasn't comfortable in front of a camera. So again, I would encourage people, if you're at all shy or bashful, just don't be. I mean, just lean into it and do it if you feel compelled to share factual information with people. But yes, we have two. So I'm on Instagram, two places. One is at Dr. Ryan Williamson, so Dr. Ryan Williamson, and then the other is at Transcend Health Group. Both of those are on the website too. So transcendhealthgroup.com is our website. And I think we got links to all of that. Um, we've had an interesting ongoing saga with Facebook. So we're still actually trying to get the Facebook page up, which is a whole other thing. And then we'll be doing some YouTube shorts as well, because apparently that's kind of a more trending thing that, again, is news to me. But our social media team says, hey, we need to be on YouTube. So, okay. And then LinkedIn, if you just search my name, Ryan Williamson, you should find me. I'm happy to provide that link if that's easy for show notes. But so those are all the places where we are currently, or about to be.
Kind of for my personal education. So this would be considered coaching. So you would not need any malpractice, perhaps, or things like that for it, correct?
That's a great question. And blanket statement, I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice, obviously. But we've consulted with several attorneys on this, and I don't have malpractice coverage for this particular arm of my business. Absolutely have it for my locums company or for my locums work in the hospital. I run all that through its own PLLC. I don't know if you all do anything similar. Have you talked about that on other shows? So that compartmentalizes liability. Of course, we have rental properties in their own LLCs and a pretty comprehensive asset protection program. So that's all kind of I think related to that conversation, which is why I mentioned that. Um, to be a coach, technically, no, you don't need medical malpractice insurance because it is not the practice of medicine. The my understanding again, and this is where I'm leaning on the attorneys here. My understanding is that you have to be crystal clear with your clients because they are not patients. That relationship does not constitute a doctor-patient relationship. It does not constitute the practice of medicine, and it is just a coaching relationship regardless of what your credentials are. And you've got to draw a hard black and white line between the two in order to separate that liability. And I think again it took me a minute, like I said, to wrap my brain around that because I'm just used to just here's your treatment, here's your plan, here's your this. But you've got to go, no, I mean, here are things that I think you need to be doing as your coach, right? And then that's up to them and physicians to actually go fill the scripts, meds, et cetera. So got to draw that line. Sorry, one more point. But I do I do have business liability insurance. Sorry, that was relevant. So there is I do have a liability policy. So for any kind of errors, emissions, whatever. So there is insurance for the business. So which I again think would highly recommend, or most people would advise. And then again, back to the kind of personal liability. I mean, we have things like umbrella policies and so on and so forth to just buffer and compartmentalize. God forbid, anyone's ever in that situation.
I think that was very helpful for the audience. Any final comments, Ryan? This was very helpful. Any final comments?
I've had a blast with you too. It's just, Shala, it's great catching up with you and Santoshi. It's a pleasure meeting. I mean, I'm so thrilled that you two are doing this. I truly believe this is an absolute need in our community. I mean, Santoshi, when we were talking a minute ago about just kind of doctors getting pinched and squeezed, I think as physicians, we organize very well in some ways, with professional societies like the American Academy of Neurology and so on and so forth. But in other ways, we're very disjointed. And I think on the business front, and just understanding and recognizing our worth and having these kinds of conversations that are so important to life and to success, happiness, wellness, that does not happen enough. And it shouldn't just be an annual PowerPoint on burnout or whatever nonsense a hospital comes up with. So really, I'm just thrilled and so proud of both of you for taking the time to really share such important issues with our community and with physicians across the country.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that because Shala and I are not podcasters. This was a learning process for us as well. But like you said, confidence is something that you build up over time. You just have to leap into it. And even now, it's become a lot smoother than when we first started. Like you also mentioned, we congregate well when there's an academic point, right? Like the AAN and AES and things like that, but there's not a lot of community for physician entrepreneurs, or it's there, but we just don't seek it out because we don't know how to seek it out. So Shala and I always encourage people to just talk to people, get on LinkedIn, go to events that aren't academic and meet people that way. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing right now is through personal connections. It isn't through a LinkedIn application. And I just don't think as doctors, we have the time to do that. And even if we have the time, we might not know how to start, especially with writing a book. I wouldn't even know how to do it. And I'm sure you didn't either, but you went and you figured it out. So I don't want people to feel intimidated by any of this stuff because you're a physician, for Christ's sakes. You were able to get into med school, get through it. We treat the most complex conditions out there. I'm pretty sure we can figure out how to be business people.
Zero doubt, and that is so well said. And first off, you all are excellent interviewers, so please add that to your stacking tally of confidence. I've done a bunch of podcasts. You guys are awesome hosts. And again, pat yourself on the back because you took the leap. You did it, right? You took that step forward knowing that it was going to be something that's a journey, right? That's such an important lesson for people. I mean, we can't expect everything we do to be perfect the first go around. It's not going to be, and you guys are crushing it. So I'm just again proud of you guys.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the audience. Thanks for tuning in to Be Empowered, the podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and rate this podcast. Share it with someone that needs to hear this. Stay strong, stay empowered, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.